Hi there, I'm First Alert meteorologist Cruz Medina. This is First Alert Weather Plus. Today, we've got multiple topics to talk about. We're going to talk about a record tornado year that this has been so far, but also an Arctic blast that arrives next week and impacts much of the U.S. We'll talk about the impact that could have on us and if there's any potential for severe weather with that Arctic blast moving in as well. Let's start with what we've seen so far this year in Middle Tennessee. This is not for the whole state of Tennessee, just Middle Tennessee. So if you watch WSMV4, you are included in Middle Tennessee, unless you're watching from Southern Kentucky. Here's the average, 1950 to 2024. We're talking an average of 10 tornadoes in Middle Tennessee. For this year so far, we have had 15 tornadoes in Middle Tennessee. Now, the year with the most tornadoes in Middle Tennessee was actually back in 2021. That's when we had 46 tornadoes in Middle Tennessee. So we're not shattering any records here as far as Middle Tennessee goes, but that's not the same for the rest of the country. If anything, it's been very, very active in other parts of the country, and this is actually the second most active tornado season on record, at least as it stands right now. Keep in mind, we do still have about a month and a half left, and this time of the year, we do see the severe potential ramp up at times, so it's not out of the realm of possibility to see more tornadoes through the rest of the year. So here's how it shakes out. I want you to take a look at your screen here. This is the tornadoes that we've had so far this year. Notice in the banner there, I've listed that this is the most tornadoes in 13 years. So if we want to see, which years had the most tornadoes, we could look all the way back into the 1800s, but 2011 holds that record, 2,250 tornadoes. If you lived in Middle Tennessee during that time, you probably remember late April of that year being extremely active. There was a massive tornado outbreak. This was the same one that caused a massive tornado outbreak with over 300 warnings in the state of Alabama. So some of those crossed into Middle Tennessee. Lots of strong tornadoes that day, EF3, EF4, and even a few EF5s down in Alabama and Mississippi. But check this out. For our average, we're talking 1999 through 2023, so that's nearly a 30-year average. 1,300 tornadoes is what we average every year, 1,355 to be exact. But if you look at this year, we're at 1,754 tornadoes. So that is a significant number. It's not quite the record for most tornadoes, but it's certainly above average, and it's nearing that number that we had in 2011. It's actually very rare for us to see over 2,000 tornadoes in a year, so it's possible. I don't think we'll hit 2,000 before the end of the year is over with, but I do think we could still see tornado outbreaks in parts of the country, just given right now we are in the fall season. That transition from fall to winter, we're going to see more cold air outbreaks coming in, so Arctic outbreaks of Canadian air moving into the mid-states. And with that cold air that moves in, there's always the possibility that that clashes strongly with the warm and moist air that we have in place, like we have the past several months. So we really haven't cooled down. We haven't had any significant cool down so far this season. We haven't even had our first freeze. And normally by now we would have had our first freeze of the season. So everything's a little bit delayed this year. That's why I'm keeping that chance of seeing more severe weather outbreaks, whether it's tornadoes or not, in the near future in many parts of the country, including the mid-state. We're not untouched by that. I would be highly surprised if we didn't get some kind of severe weather episode here before the year is over with. Now, when it comes to this time of the year, we do see a second spike in severe weather. Okay, so the main tornado season is actually in the spring. We're talking generally March, April, and May, and then our season dies down a little bit as we go into the summer months. Notice how in November and December, you see a little bit of a spike there as far as the tornado count goes. And that's because, once again, when cold air moves in, it's battling that warm air, and it takes a while for the cold air to win over and for it to just stay cold for the rest of the winter. We know here in Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, this area or this part of the country, the Mid-South, we are susceptible to severe weather outbreaks. We're not that far from the Gulf of Mexico, so lots of Gulf moisture coming up really in any time of the year. I mean, we just had back-to-back years with December tornado outbreaks 2021, and then again this past year of 2023. So with that said, it's possible we do see more of those, even here in Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky. Obviously, when there are chances for that to happen, we're going to keep you updated on that, but I just want to let you know we're not necessarily out of the clear, and we could add to that tornado count by the time the year's over with, whether that's here or whether that's elsewhere in the country. I mean, the tropics are still active. The tropics really added to our tornado count. So I want to go back to that and just talk a little bit about numbers right now. I mean, we had 4 hurricanes landfall in the United States this year. We had Debbie, we had Beryl, we had Milton, and we had Helene. Each of those spawned tornadoes. For example, Hurricane Milton, which did impact Florida, that was the only state it really impacted. There was over 125 tornadoes reported from that one tropical system. So I do think that has a lot to do with why this number is so high this year. And with the tropics staying pretty active through the rest of November, because the ocean temperatures are still so warm, it's possible there could be another hurricane landfall before hurricane season ends on November 30th. And if that were the case, we'd have to watch out for this number to increase again, as pretty much with any landfalling tropical system, the right-hand side of that storm is capable of producing tornadoes. So that's something that we're going to be keeping our eye out on. And of course, even with that, we'll keep you updated as well. Let's talk about this upper level pattern for next week. I do think parts of the country will see severe weather. Now, whether we are the parts of the country that see it, that's yet to be seen. But we're going to get this bowling ball of cold air to just come in. So this is what we call a cutoff low. It gets cut off from the main jet stream. I actually want to play this back so you can see it in motion. Notice how it moves in from the Pacific Northwest, and then eventually it gets cut off. So you'll see just a circle form there. That's it getting cut off from the jet stream, and it's just going to sink right over the heartland of the country. So we're talking the Midwest into the Mid-South. All of these areas could see cooler than average temperatures. I think this is the first true cool down of the fall season in many parts of the country. And that cooler Canadian air is certainly going to come rushing in. It's going to kick out that warm and moist air that we've had in place. And with that, like I said, I think somewhere in the country, especially back in the plains, maybe the Midwest, there could be some severe weather to come out of this. But what this means for us, at least right now as it stands, is we could see some rain by the middle of next week. We could also see a bit of a cool down. How far south this low dives, that's yet to be seen. I'd want to see some more data come in and just monitor those trends over the next few days. But if this is able to dive even farther south, we certainly could have a much cooler air mass on our hands. So that's something that we're going to want to keep updated with right here on WSMV4. We'll keep you updated on that. Just make sure that you're checking back for more information. But right now, it's just something that we're monitoring. So that's going to do it for this edition of First Alert Weather Plus. As always, if you have any weather, environmental, or science-related topics that you're curious to hear more about, I'd love to get those on the show. So feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll see you next time on First Alert Weather Plus.